Welcome back to another episode of Mojo Talk Radio. My name is Pamela Silva, your host, and I'm bringing you another hot topic. And this one, for you entrepreneurs out there, is on the topic of resiliency and how to stand firm and make sure that you're happy, healthy, and strong in all your relationships as you move through the course of your business life and everyday life too, because we need to be resilient everywhere. My guest today is a longtime friend and what I would call the go-to person in the land of resiliency, Michael Ballard. Michael, welcome and to join us here on Talk Radio.
It is great to be here, and thank you for having me on. It's good.
Michael, can you just share with the listening audience what you do out in the world to help your people and others out there?
Well, I like to help individuals, teams, associations, organizations understand that their communications and that resiliency is a lot about belief systems, process, and skills to stay healthier, happier, more productive, because it has a big impact on productivity, morale, retention, and happiness. And to me, if you don't have happiness and morale is low in a company, why are people there? Because they have to be. Not a good place to be, whether you got a company of 3 or 3,000 or 30,000. So resiliency is in part about a company belief system, skills, process, and behaviors for more successful outcomes and happiness in the process. Not every day, every instant, but as I always say, if 4 out of 5 days a week aren't relatively happy, I'd say you got a problem.
Absolutely. Michael, can you give us a really solid definition of resiliency?
Yes, I say resiliency is about our ability to bounce back from adversity, staying safe and happy and healthy, or safer, happier, and healthier, depending on the intensity of the issue we're bouncing back from.
Okay. So let's talk about this, because when I first started hearing about the word or term resiliency, it sounded to me like we were talking about situations and or individuals that either might have been incapacitated in a mental health way or something critical has happened to them in various ways. Then I came to understand that resiliency is something that we all need to maintain and entertain in our healthy mental health life. So I thought that when I brought you on here, Michael, it is with the intention to help the viewers understand how resiliency in their business lives is an important aspect, because we are dealing with individuals in which we don't know where they're quote unquote coming from, and the mask that we all wear can play a devastating part in our interactive relationships and engagements with these others. And before we even started talking, we were talking about some of our own experiences around how people show up.
Yes. Very much so. I taught community college for 12 years, and one of my students was special. And I got a call one night saying, before you start class tomorrow at 8:30, there's a 7:30 meeting for 20 minutes. And the lawyer will be here as well as one of the psychologists, because we have a student with an issue. And they had what they call a personality disorder. And they had said some pretty nasty things about 9 of us. Luckily, a senior staffer overheard it and pounced on, is the only way I can put it, pounced on the situation and got that person in front of a counselor and the company lawyer all within an hour to put a stop to this, because rumors can ruin careers, not just facts.
Absolutely.
And it was breathtaking at what they accused us all of, and it was devastating. So luckily it was resolved. Things were contained. That person was given limited access to the campus after that. They graduated. It was suggested that they wouldn't be welcome to come back and take advanced education there anymore, and they moved out of province, whether that was out of embarrassment or just, I'm going to go on somewhere else to wreak havoc where I'm not known.
You see, and that's the thing when we're dealing with unknowns, right? And I mean, people end up in actual long-term relationship with unknowns. And it's
very much so.
Out of control. So I'm talking from the perspective of those I would call victims of this. Like how you were landed in that position, and I landed in a similar position with somebody, and just recently is in a similar relationship with somebody that has has yet to be diagnosed, but can be diagnosed because it's similar traits and tendencies. And how do we take care of ourselves while in the whirlwind of that experience?
Oh, that's a good question. For me, it was reflecting on what's going on and frame of reference. And to go back to one of my favorite skills is mindfulness. So as I talk to you, I'm reflecting on a basic level, is my tone and rate matching yours? Is my inflection matching yours? Yes, we're going to go our sideways trips and our up and downs, but we're staying very respectful and we're going to learn from each other. But if in being mindful, I notice that you get angry when I can reflect that I didn't do anything to cause anger, that's on you, not on me. But I have to really be in the moment. I have to really be listening and paying attention and processing what's going on. And if you get angry, if the person you're dealing with is acting off the page unique, trying to be respectful, then it's up to me to say, so what's the issue here? Because obviously they often want to manipulate you and turn you into a victim. And if you don't play the victim card by politely saying, so what's the issue here? I remember a client who was a buyer and it was $1.1 million, a lot of money on the line. And I was only in my third position. I had some good training, but in hindsight, more would have been even better. And he would say things in the middle of a purchasing session about my spouse. He'd never met her, but derogatory, nasty things. Once I stood up and I found out I had 2 fists. I was going to kill the blinkety blank. And a little voice said, career limiting, wrong move. And of course, there's that two-way conversation one can have with self. I know, but I'd like to do it to him anyways. Yes, but career limiting and prison. I don't care. I want to. It didn't last but 2 seconds. And he's saying, what's the problem? Of course, he knew he pushed my buttons. Oh, I just had a little back spasm. In my head, I'd punched his lights out, threw him out the window. So he was trying to be a manipulator. Now, eventually in life, it caught up with him and he went bankrupt. But it was sad that he was so smart and yet so differently functional than people you want to deal with.
So how did you feel? How did you manage yourself and your emotions in that time? Because we're talking resiliency when we come around those types of people, right?
Well, my initial reaction was anger. And then my response of jumping up with fists was like, oh, I've never done this in my whole life before. I'm slow to anger. I get frustrated real fast, but I managed to mask that most of the time. Then it concerned me that I could get so angry, I literally saw myself hitting him and throwing him out a window. So I inwardly said, inappropriate. A little voice, as I said earlier, said, I know, but I still want to do it. Oh, that's okay to want to do it. Just don't do it. But as I drove home from that, I shook. I was so upset that he would be so vulgar about somebody he'd never met. And I believe that was his way of trying to control me, because he wanted another couple of percentage points on a $1 million order.
So I'm coming through a situation similar to that. What are some pointers for me to bring my resiliency quotient up?
Well, I go back to practicing our mindfulness to the best of our ability, being in the moment. What have I said or done or interacted with my body language, my words, my rate, my tone, my look that could have done this? And of course, with the buyer of the $1 million and the college student, nothing. I hadn't done anything wrong. It was them, not me. So it was me reflecting that, yes, Michael, you reacted for 2 or 3 seconds, but then tone it down. It's not you, it's them. They have to own this behavior. They're trying to project onto me to get a response. I haven't done it. But that took me 4 or 5 hours of training with a coach to get there. So once I understood that there was passive avoidance, assertive, aggressive, and passive aggressive behavior, that gave me a network, a framework to say, what's going on here? Oh, they just used some aggressive behavior. Then they went all passive. Who, me? And I went, this is like fishing. Reel them in, reel them out. Reel them in, reel them out. Set the hook. And just be careful, because that's what the game is to them. And it's a game. Your feelings
a push-pull type of engagement.
Yes. Back and forth, back and forth. And you're just a game to them.
Okay.
Because
So
your feelings don't count.
really dangerous and unhealthy for someone because it has the ability to tire you out, drain you of all that good stuff.
Completely flatten you. It can completely, if you let it, if you're not aware of it, it'll completely flatten you. And I've been completely flattened a few times. But with age and some alleged maturity and some sessions, the coaching sessions, and some self-coaching sessions, I believe that you should get coaching and coach yourself. If I'm going to a meeting where the other person's behavior is suspect, but there's a real big potential, I will still go. Mm-hmm. But I coach myself going in saying, I'm going to be low key. I'm not going to react too much. If they mention a number, I'll say, well, that's a place to start.
Okay.
I'm not going to say.
You mentioned mindfulness and getting coaching and self-coaching. What other resiliency tools can we pull out on ourselves?
I would suggest watch out for the words we use to define the situation.
So languaging.
Languaging, yes. So our language. So the buyer of the $1 million contract, I could have called him a manipulative SOB and stronger words, but that would have made it more intense, as opposed to, oh, what a sad little man. I'm physically safe. He's trying to get a reaction and make another $50,000 on a $1 million sale. Ain't gonna work. You knew the terms before we started. We're just discussing items now. Terms are taken care of. We're trying to go backwards.
Yeah.
So in my head, the most derogatory I got was, what a sad little man. So I kept my sense of power, and I just realized he was trying to get power, and that changed the whole dynamics. And I got what I wanted out of that, and he was out of that business within 4 years. Thank heavens.
Okay. So, as entrepreneurs, sorry, Michael, and I'll just sort of move this along because if you might be able to answer all at once at the same time. As entrepreneurs, we are always in the role of marketing and sales and interwinding and looping. There's a lot of rejection involved in that process.
Yes.
You think something's going to happen, something doesn't happen. So you're always on the line, always on edge, taking risks, leaping. How do we use resiliency? Because that comes to my mind a lot these days. What does a resilient lifestyle look like, and what can we do? And it will probably fall into line with the last question I asked you as to what are some of the tools in that tool belt that we need to have.
Well, I'll go back and say that being resilient as an entrepreneur partly comes about as, how have you allowed life and yourself to define you? So I used to be known as a prospecting guy. I love to hunt new potential business. Now I have other people who do some of that, and I still do some of it. Mm-hmm. So it's great to let some of that go and free up my time to work on my business, not in my business. So as an entrepreneur, part of it was learning to give some things partially away.
So letting go.
Yep. So trust and verify, but let some things go. And partly being an entrepreneur was learn new skills. Maybe you don't need them, but maybe you'll discover you want them. Stretch out of your comfort zones. So I'm going to say something that nobody but you will hear for the first time, and then your viewers. Michael's considered dancing lessons. Don't giggle. Michael's not known to have grace on the dance floor. I got some good moves. I can bust a good move, but doing the same thing twice in a row, nah. So it's getting more comfortable in this body. I am told I'm very graceful in rollerblades, that I'm very exceptional on a biking. I love to bike. It's the closest to flying I can come, and 30 miles an hour on a bike with a little hill is easy for me to achieve and higher. So I've done some things. I've learned to swim underwater, one breath. I swam my first kilometer a couple of years ago. That was exciting. Water scares me. I have muscle, bone, fat density that I sink. And we're going to have a thunderstorm at my end of Toronto by the sounds of it. That's not my stomach. I'm not that hungry. So as an entrepreneur, stretch out of your comfort zones. I took Toastmasters 20 years ago. Best thing I ever did for me. It was great. Well, it was more than 20 years ago, but it was a while ago. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to take some dance lessons and see how I can go from scared out of my mind to, maybe I could be almost elegant one day.
Yes. Yeah.
That'll be another show. Maybe some video for proof.
Do you work with entrepreneurs, Michael?
I do. I have worked with some small firms to help them get past their sales fears. I work I've done 4 projects in the food industry. I've got a music group interested in me, getting them some attention because they have skills beyond belief and can't seem to get any attention on YouTube, Facebook, or a record deal. And I said, well, I can't visit long because you can't afford me, but if you want to afford me for 3 sessions, let's do it. So I've got this bright, shiny-eyed 23-year-old that would put most contestants on The Voice to shame. I want her to be famous because of her gifts, not her dance.
Well, right here, right now, Michael, coach us through a frightening situation that will help us get on that stage.
Okay, I want people to better describe what they do. So to go back in time, one of my coaching clients basically said, I'm kind of sort of adequate as a leasing agent for a multinational, multi-billion-dollar company. And they were regularly closing $20,000, $30,000 leasing deals at a residential place. Mm-hmm. And they have a high level of competition. And some of the people they had to do these leasing deals with were less than pleasant. And so I said to this professional one day, how would you describe yourself? And the description she gave me was, oh my gosh, you thought it was a hurt 7-year-old. And yet I saw a smart, hardworking, highly focused, very productive, highly educated person. So we spent time getting them to reframe, reimagine how they define themselves. So that helped them with their sales skills. So within 18 months, they added $9,700 to their income. Within 9 more months, they started working on their master's degree. And when they graduated from their master's degree, they had more than doubled it compared to when I first met them. So I didn't do all the work after the reimagining how they define themselves, but I got them to, as I put it, look in the mirror and tell the real truth, not the default, I'm just a kind of, sort of. I said.
So we have defaults when we think of ourselves. We have the default buttons in which we go back to what we sort of imagine in our minds of who we are in the world.
Yes.
And that may or may not be healthy, helping us.
Yes.
It to me, it lowers or raises our ability to be resilient in the world.
And it lowers and raises our fees too.
Yeah. Pardon?
It lowers and raises our fees that others believe we're worthy of.
Yes. And that's another problem for entrepreneurs is that whole what is your fee and the ability to stop under earning.
Yes, exactly.
And when I was going through that process to stop under earning, it was a struggle in my mind because it was a matter of valuation on myself.
Yes, I remember my banker in my first year of business saying, Michael, so when you left corporate, you made this much, and you start in your first year, you made almost the same amount. Wow. Everybody else makes 40% or so in the first year. I said, well, maybe, but maybe not. My expectations were to meet and exceed my corporate income. So one of the reasons I left. Yeah. I could sell millions for them. I should be able to sell hundreds of thousands for me.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, and by the way, your business plan, it's gone to head office as an example of what an entrepreneur can do.
Yeah.
I bought 5 different types of business plans, merged them for one that I liked. It suited my style. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So for entrepreneurs to move forward, how have you allowed your customers, yourself, your suppliers to define you, and how do you up your game? So people say to me, well, what would a resiliency guy do for salespeople? I'd increase their ability to be persistent so that when they stop cold calling and they start warm calling, and warm calling is like cold calling, except you're looking forward to a meaty conversation with an interesting person who might even want to buy what you do. But you're not calling them to sell anything. You're calling to see where their pain points are, to make a new acquaintance, and to create some engagement and connection. And so that over time, 3 calls or 7 calls, they go, aren't you going to sell me something? Well, yeah, that's how I helped the food company. We did
so
90.
Sales and resiliency going hand in hand, the ability to keep going in spite of what is before them.
Exactly, and not stopping, because rejection hurts. I don't care what it is. I said prospecting for new business development is sort of like dating. 100 no's hurt. I don't care how tough you are. maybe they don't hurt as much after 20 years, but there's still 100 no's. So it's always like, well, I didn't say it quite the right way for that person today. So maybe next week. So one of my tips for entrepreneurs when I was doing the grocery client, which was one of my favorites, was one of his potential buyers gets 500 phone calls a week from potential suppliers. He has no time to answer his phone to 500 buyers or sellers that he doesn't know. So I left him messages saying, you're too busy to call me back. Don't bother to call me back. One day I'll talk to you live and in person, face to face.
Yeah.
Have a great day. I started calling all the people, all his direct reports. He had 11 direct reports as buyer for a national chain. Talked to his researcher, talked to his safety officer, talked to his packaging expert, talked to his administrative assistant, talked to his assistant's assistant, talked to his VP above him. And by the time I got to him in 8 months, he was like, man, you've talked to everybody but me. I've been waiting for your call. Yes, some would say I made it a longer sales cycle.
Yeah.
But we had complete success. By the time I talked to him, 10 out of the 11 people that reported to him said yes. His VP, I said, I don't want you to say yes or no. It's not your place. You have a buyer that's going to say yes or no with his team. I just want you to know what we do and why we do it and why we think we're world class.
Yeah. Yeah.
When by the time I called him, he was ready. I'd been cheeky. I'd left the voicemail saying, next time you're leaving town, we'll provide the limo. I want 3 minutes.
Yeah.
If you don't like what I have to say, you can pull over anywhere, including the highway, and say, out.
So basically what you're then telling us is that it ties in nicely with persistence and perseverance, resiliency. Persistent perseverance, resiliency.
Yes, and so part of that is language use. I am, I can, I do, take action. I have, I am, I can, I do are 4 of the major phrases of being resilient.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So
there's days where I'm not quite up to the game and up to the speed, and that's okay. Nobody's perfect, and nobody's 100 out of 100.
Yeah.
724, 365. So sometimes we have to change our activities for the day. If I'm having an off day and I feel more like Eeyore, do I have to? Not a good day necessarily to phone that big prospect that's got 6 figures of.
That was my day today. I had to readjust my day based on my energy flow. It wasn't happening up here, and I knew that I wasn't getting it to change. So, okay, let's change the flow then.
Yep, exactly. So part of it is recognizing flow, our language use, and a famous professional from many years ago Zig Ziglar used to talk about stinking thinking.
Yeah.
Well, psychologists would call it, how do you frame things? How do you reframe things? So you could say I was threatened with my health issues, or was I challenged by them? The truth was at 3:30 in the morning, I was often threatened by them. But darned if every day by 8 or 9 o'clock I rallied and I was challenged by them. And it made it a better quality experience. So how we choose to frame things on purpose has a lot to do with the quality of our experience, and our customers pick up on that. Pamela, you really need to buy my sales coaching program because, you just don't cut it. Or, Pamela, I think you're really hitting a lot of notes, but let's talk about how 3 sessions with me for sales coaching could get you that extra 4% closure rate you desire.
Yeah.
And as one of my coaches said, it's the difference between holidaying and a staycation and 3 dinners out in a week versus going to that tropical island you deserve to go to. It was like, okay, I was hooked. She was my coach.
Well, there you go. So it's all in the languaging and the ability to keep at it.
And
know your value.
Yes, and go back to your self-belief system. Does your language, have you redefined yourself in a negative manner lately?
Yes. I
got, with age, my hair's still all covering the spots I want it to cover, but it's starting to thin out. I go into elevators these days and I can see scalp under the light. And I just go, well, at my age, it's just good to have some. That's what counts. Because my self-image is not defined much by the outer, it's more by the inner.
So, Michael, as we wind down our conversation here,
yes.
What are some parting thoughts you want to leave us around the concept of resiliency for entrepreneurs and what we can do next with ourselves or for ourselves in that realm?
Well, with entrepreneurs, I would say, who are your official mentors? Who are your unofficial mentors? So unofficially, I've read biographies and autobiographies to nurture my spirit, nurture my head and my heart. Because I think it's really important to nurture yourself and put yourself on a diet, a resiliency diet. So I have read and listened to all the greats, Les Brown, Zig Ziglar, W. Mitchell, the famous speaker out of Snowmass, Colorado. And it's really important to do that. But then there's also, who are your local experts? I have a lady who, as a teenager, came to Canada while World War II was going on a tramp steamer. Tramp steamers were being shot and sunk. She could have died. But she had a vision for her life, and she came to Canada and went to Queen's University as one of the first three of her race. Courage, pales in comparison to what a lot of other people did to go to college or university.
Yeah, yeah.
Imagine coming up on a boat full of men as a young female to Canada, up the Atlantic seaboard while boats were getting sunk every day. Wow. So she's one of my local heroes. And when I think days are tough, I think, what does Marion do? How did Marion do it? Because she went on to build a school with her husband in her home country, and when the local politicians of the day wouldn't let her type go past grade 8, they formed a political party, eventually booted the old you-know-what's out of power that took over and allowed kids to get their high school too so they could go to university anywhere in the British Empire at a good price. And now 2 of her grandchildren, one's an international lawyer, one's a medical professional.
Wow.
My, oh my, that little old lady, she's only 93 pounds, is one dynamic force of nature, as was her husband, who became a member of the British Empire, Order of Europe Empire.
Yeah.
So that's, who do you allow in your life, and how do they nurture and feed you, whether it's in person or their written word or their story?
Okay, okay. So, Michael, how can we find you?
Oh, well, if you www.resiliencyforlife.com or resilientmichael@gmail.com.
Wow.
Either one. And I'm not shy. I'm on Twitter and Resilient Michael, and I'm on Facebook, and I'm in LinkedIn as Resiliency for Life. And it's good to share because we all need to be resilient.
Well, you've got a great Facebook group, Resiliency for Life. You have a lot of members there and contributing.
Yeah, we got a few thousand.
Yeah, very good.
And your co-host is looking for time.
What are you reading right now, Michael?
What am I reading? I am reading Mitch Albom book on messages from heaven, or telephone calls from heaven.
Ah, okay, nice.
And I like it because it reminds me about what's really important in life, which is each other. In a world full of stuff. And I like my toys. It's my new Bluetooth wireless. I took a long time to buy one. Some would say 10 years too long. But people are more important. I get things done with people, through people.
Very good.
So a great reminder, and it's an easy read, but it's also good for my heart.
Very good. Michael, thank you so much for bringing your wisdom to us here on Mojo Talk Radio.
Thank you.
As
Great
always,
to be
we're
here.
always looking for ways to move ourselves forward, and resiliency, the message of resiliency is a big and important one.
Thank you.
And we'll keep talking.
Please look forward to it.